Hello, my name is Mike Reed. I'm Executive Director for BrightView Wakefield. BrightView Wakefield is a home-style senior living community located right off of Crescent Street, just off of downtown Wakefield. And BrightView Wakefield offers 131 total rental apartments, offering apartment homes for independent living style, assisted living style, and does have the Wellspring Village, which is the secure neighborhood within the community for, again, rental apartments for those folks needing memory care support and Alzheimer care and that kind of thing. We're really happy to be with Wakefield Cable Access today. And we've done some shows in the past where we had a panel of experts come on. These shows are designed towards the senior population. The senior population is growing, and we want to do these shows really as informational shows for you seniors out there to maybe pick up some tips and get some ideas on some of the things that face us as we get older in life. We're very fortunate today to have another expert with us. We have Patrick Curley, who is a certified elder law attorney, also located right here in Wakefield with the firm of Curley Law Firm. So we're really fortunate to have Patrick with us, a certified elder law attorney. And Patrick, thanks for being on the show.
Mike, thanks for having me.
Pleasure. My understanding, so certified elder law attorney is a designation that you have earned for yourself. I understand that you are only one of 23 actually in the Commonwealth who have gotten this designation. Maybe tell us a little bit about what drove you to this and what it took to get it and what it might mean for those folks who are watching.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. In fact, let's just step back and go back to my childhood here in Wakefield. When I was in grade school, I started with Cub Scouts, and Cub Scouts went on to Boy Scouts. And I remember the leaders. We had Mr. Coolidge in Cub Scouts and Mr. Galvin, Scoutmaster Galvin in Boy Scouts. And I went on to earn my Eagle rank, the top rank in Scouting. And throughout Scouting, there was a focus on respecting our elders, serving our elders, helping those in need. And those lessons stick with you, and they stuck with me. And I went on to law school ultimately, came back to Massachusetts and joined my father, Mark Curley, who's also a lawyer in Wakefield, and we joined together and created Curley Law Firm. And my dad was one of the early practitioners in elder law and estate planning. And so I saw that area of practice, and it was a natural fit for me because it allowed me to pursue my passion for law, but also to continue to help serve seniors and help them through this complex area of aging because our laws are so complex now. So in Massachusetts, the highest designation one can achieve as an attorney in elder law is called a certified elder law attorney. And to do that, an attorney has to focus many years just in this area of law. They have to take dozens and dozens of hours of continuing legal education. They have to have the support and recommendations of other elder law experts in the Commonwealth. And most importantly, they have to pass a national bar-style exam, a full-day bar exam, that has a notoriously low pass rate. And so I am very proud that I earned the designation. I passed that exam on my first try and became a certified elder law attorney back in 2008. And this is especially important today because seniors are trying to figure out who can they work with on elder law and estate planning matters. And it seems that all lawyers now are claiming to do elder law. And a certified elder law attorney designation gives a clear indication to a client or to a senior in their family that that lawyer really specializes and focuses in this area, that that lawyer is focused their practice in this area. And that's true certainly of my practice.
Certainly. Well, you must be very proud because obviously you put a lot of time and effort into that. And I think it points out, a good point. I mean, you are specializing in this area. It's somewhat akin to if I had a malady, if you had something go wrong with you, you for that particular malady, you would want to go to a specialist as opposed to someone general. I think you point out clearly that certainly plenty of attorneys are getting into the area or trying to get into the area of elder law. I'm going to guess because the population is aging and there's going to be more seniors out there. But I think, as you point out, going to an expert, I mean, really clearly helps. One of the things that came out of our last show was planning, and obviously this is something that you're talking about. So maybe talk a little bit about how the planning process starts. I'm sure, we obviously work with seniors and their families quite a bit. It's not an easy thing to talk about. Where's my money going to go? How much money do I have? These kind of things. How do you start the planning process? Some of the things you get involved with.
Sure. So there's two broad groups of clients that we have, and I think that mimics the seniors in general. We have folks who are doing advanced planning where they're relatively healthy, they have their capacity, and they're looking to create a plan, a roadmap for the future, so to speak. And then we have another population that needs crises planning. They've had an accident or a major health crises. Maybe they're in the hospital or a nursing home rehab, and they need urgent attention, and they might not have capacity. And so when we're working with families on the other side of this, where it's advanced planning, one of the things that families come in, they often think that going to see a lawyer is about planning for their death. And what I tell people is that at any one point in their lifetime, they're more likely to become disabled or sick than they are to die. And so a lot of our practice is actually focused on their lifetime needs. And I start with what are their goals. And I'll tell you, most seniors express to me a goal that they want to maintain their independence. They're proud. They've worked hard. And so one of the key areas that we talk about to start with planning to help them achieve that goal is creating directives to ensure that they have decision makers with the necessary authority if the senior becomes sick or incapacitated. And so if a senior is incapacitated and they haven't done planning, there is no one out there who can make healthcare decisions or financial decisions for them. It doesn't matter if they're married or they have kids. The law prevents that. You have to appoint people. And so on the healthcare side, certainly we would encourage that they would have a healthcare proxy, a document that appoints someone to make healthcare decisions for them. And along with that, they should consider having a HIPAA authorization and release. HIPAA is a federal law that has very strict privacy regulations for medical records. Mm-hmm. And a living will does not talk about where your assets go when you die. It actually talks about your end-of-life decision-making wishes. Mm-hmm. And most of my clients don't want their body to be kept alive just because we have robots and machines that can do that. Mm-hmm. If they are in a coma and no signs that they can come back to who they are, they don't want those heroic measures taken to try to keep them alive, mm-hmm. even if they're not really alive, so to speak. And then on the flip side of that, we have planning we call a durable power of attorney mm-hmm. for financial matters. Now, a durable power of attorney is a document you appoint an agent to make financial decisions for you. But the key here, Mike, is that the title on the document doesn't necessarily control the powers in the document. Mm-hmm. So lots of people may have a power of attorney document, but what we find in our practice is that many power of attorney documents are inadequate to achieve a client's goals. And as I said to you before, a client wants to maintain their independence, try to preserve what they've worked hard to save and earn during their lifetime. And too many power of attorney documents are missing that key authority, an asset protection authority. Mm-hmm. And you might say, well, I don't understand. These folks are going to lawyers and getting these drafted. How could they not contain that authority? Well, it goes back to the issue of lawyers that are dabbling in the area of elder law. This is such a difficult area of law. You can't just put your toe in. Mm-hmm. You're either all in or not at all. And so lawyers are drafting estate plans, but not necessarily appreciating the language that should be in those plans, particularly in a crisis. Mm-hmm. And so seniors really need to be asking hard questions about what level of experience and commitment their lawyer has made to this area of law so that they can be sure they get the planning done right the first time.
Certainly sounds like it makes sense. And what you're, through this planning, again, we all know, and it's very similar to our business, having, folks transition into communities like ours. Many times people do wait for a crisis, and that does not generally work out very well. What you're saying is you're providing at least, crises might happen. As we get older, things happen to us. We fall, we have illnesses, certain things happening, but you're providing this roadmap, and then even if crises do happen, at least we're a little more prepared for that situation.
Without question. Seniors want to keep the burden off their loved ones or their kids. They have been self-resilient folks for generations. This is the greatest generation, so many of our clients. And so when they think about it in those terms, the idea of having an estate plan that they've designed, that they've thought out, and they know is going to help take a burden off their kids if they get sick or they need extra care in the future is a great relief to them. And frankly, I think a great relief to their kids. But the key is you got to do that planning ideally while you're well in advance. If you wait until a crisis, then the family may be forced to pursue what's called a guardianship, which the court appoints a guardian to make healthcare decisions, or a conservatorship in which a court appoints a conservator to make financial decisions. And while the court can do that, going into the probate court, as you can imagine, painfully expensive, very stressful to their loved ones, very time-consuming, and no guarantee that the court's going to appoint the person that you would want to make those decisions for you. Yeah. So take control of your own future by doing that planning in advance is my best advice.
Yeah. Doing the planning is going to provide you the greatest control. There's no question
Correct.
about it. Let's talk a little bit about, you talk to a lot of folks, and we see, we talk about the generation a little bit. Obviously, a great generation, worked hard, saved a lot of money. Many of the folks, I'm sure you talk to, we do too, lived in that house for 40, sometimes longer years than that. So I think, obviously everybody's desire is we'd like to stay at home as much as we could. We paid our mortgage off. We perceive that our expenses aren't all that great. Maybe, because obviously you have to get involved with financing, and obviously we do too as people look at moving to a community or something like that. Talk a little bit about, the pluses and minuses of staying at home. Most people would like to do it. I'm sure I would too, but there can be pitfalls along the way.
Well, when I'm talking with families, as I say, I start by asking the senior, what are their goals? And sometimes they'll express it as, I want to stay in my home until my last breath. And others will say, I want to maintain my independence. And even where a senior might say, look, I want to stay in my home, I then ask them about what their needs are in their home. What is the design of the home? I certainly know in my house, it was built in 1949. It's got narrow doorways, stairs up and down, lots of trip factors. It wasn't designed with aging in mind. And in fact, very few houses are, even new houses today, it seems. And so when I talk with families and with clients, the key may not necessarily be stay in their home forever. It's to maintain their independence. That's really the key goal. And so if a client wants to stay at home, I tell them they've got to make sure that if they need services in the future, that they've got to get those services. If they need to make modifications to the home to make it safe for them, they've got to do that. Because staying in the home in and of itself may not be a successful goal. And I'll give you an example. If you're at home and you need extra help and you're not getting any social stimulation, no physical exercise, no mental stimulation challenges, you might end up depressed. You could end up having a fall or other accident, and you might end up far worse off because of that. You could be hospitalized, and then you could require a nursing home. And so many seniors that I don't want a nursing home, I don't want a nursing home. What I counsel is they've got to make the investment now to maintain their health, to maintain their independence. And for some folks that might mean staying at home, and others it might mean a senior living community or other option. In fact, I would ask you, what types of financial models do the different senior living communities offer for seniors today?
Sure. It's, people are learning more. One of the things we have to realize, Patrick, is that this home style senior living types of communities is a fairly young industry. Many of the folks we're talking with today, the seniors, they really cared, and I think as we talked about, the way you used to do it in the past was you took care of your aging parents. Because there weren't communities like this. And when you couldn't take care of your aging parents, it was a nursing home. You know, nothing against nursing homes, they serve a great purpose, but that was the only option, and sometimes their parents, so many of them still remember those days and maybe don't remember them quite fondly. But people are learning more about senior living. And really, when they look at senior living communities, usually it's two different options. One is the buy-in. So you can go to communities where you actually purchase, and most folks take the sale of their house to purchase that apartment, varying sizes, sometimes separate little homes, you know, that kind of thing. And that's where you're actually purchasing and putting in $300 to $500, sometimes up higher than that. To purchase that apartment, and then you're also paying monthly services, and so it's a big investment. It's basically reinvesting your money, and then there is the BrightView way, or the way we do it, which is the pure rental concept. And that's where you're not having to put in that large amount of money up front. You're really basically renting almost on a month. You do sign a year lease, but you're renting on a monthly basis. You still get and that's what we try to point out again as people look at their homes and say, boy, it's not costing me that much to live here at home. We have to remember, you know, the age of the house, that it's not getting any younger, what maintenance needs to be done, what is the upkeep, what are some of the extra services. You know, when you come to a rental community like a BrightView, everything is included in the price. So no utilities, you get some meals involved there, you get housekeeping, and as you say, the social interaction is the big thing. It's having activities and things to do right at your fingertips, not just in the community, but getting out to do things. So many of the folks that do come to us, but that's basically the two styles to look at. Certainly there are options. I mean, the industry has grown. We highly recommend people that come to us to, you know, really learn it, but they're really learning it more, and they're also learning, you know, what is the price factor of both the entry fee or the buy-in and the rental.
Right, and I think that must be very important to seniors as they're looking at their options, because obviously there's a big difference between paying a monthly rental fee versus an enormous buy-in. For some folks, that might not be financially viable, where a rental model might be viable. At least there's different options for different people, depending on what their goals are.
Absolutely. And just speaking of that, I mean, finances, we all know are a factor, and I'm sure you get involved with seniors on this. You know, I think you and I both agree this has been a great generation that a little bit early on with the Depression era, but certainly were affected by it to a degree, have been great savers. In many cases, their home is their asset. That's why, darn it, I'm going to hold on to this. But maybe you could talk a little bit about how you work with, you know, what money is there, and no one knows how long we're going to live, and certainly people are living a little longer, but how you advise them on that.
So when we're doing planning, you know, we look at obviously an individual's asset picture, and we talked about the advanced directives, the healthcare directives, and power of attorney. We often talk to them about trust planning as well. And a trust is a type of estate planning where they can hold their house or their savings or what assets they have in this trust. They can be the trustee and manage it. But if they were to get sick, they name a successor trustee who can manage that trust asset for them in the future as well. And there's different types of trusts out there. A couple of common trusts are a revocable trust, in which the senior can revoke and amend it at any time, and an irrevocable trust, in which the senior cannot revoke or amend it. And irrevocable trusts often are created in the context of doing Medicaid or mass health planning and trying to shield an asset in the future. That's a bit different. In terms of the finances and costs, when we talk with folks about their house, they need to factor in not just whether the mortgage is paid off, it's what are the costs to keep that house up in the future. And when they've bought their house many decades ago, they may find that there's capital improvements, big capital improvements that may be owed in the future. That has to be part of the decision making as well, in terms of what the financial picture is going to look like 5 years from now, 10 years from now, and what the cost is going to be to maintain that house. The other factor they have to think about is what kind of support and services they can get in their home and whether there can be family involvement. One of the things that I see quite a bit is that families are much more fragmented than they were generations ago. Even in my own family, my brother and his wife and kids live in Hawaii. And it's the other side of the world. And what I see with our clients is their kids are not always living downstairs or next door or even in the same community or state. And yet the kids have been the ones traditionally trying to keep an eye on mom and dad and give them help and take them to doctor's appointments and such. But when the kids have moved all away, or they're working 2 jobs, or the kids and their spouses are each working, it's harder than it used to be.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's something that families have to factor in terms of creating that support system, whether they're going to be at home, whether that can be a success, or whether they're going to look at a senior living model as another alternative.
Right, exactly. I think you're absolutely right. I mean, it's a global society these days. People are living all over the world, and again, that traditional thought of we'll always be there for our parents may not be. And I think you're absolutely right. Even if you're not living many miles away, you're close by. Most adult children are very busy these days. I mean, we look at ourselves. They sort of call it the sandwich generation. They have kids. They've got their own lives, and it's just not as easy to come and get mom or dad to a medical appointment or be there for them as it used to be. So I think that's a factor. And certainly, coming into a community certainly can help with peace of mind for everybody. It gives peace of mind for the senior because they know their adult children. Okay, look, I know you're in pretty good shape. One of the things, obviously, we look at into the community, we talked about this a little bit, was the support system that can be there. You can have help coming in, obviously, into the home, and that kind of families can stop by. But in most of the communities that, like with BrightView, we have even in an independent style living where you don't necessarily get care from our folks, we still have people around the clock, keeping an eye on things. The sociability is big, keeping people engaged. That constant exercise you talk about really helps people. And with a BrightView, we have the continuum at a BrightView Wakefield, which is independent, then the assisted, memory care if you need it. So you can really stay at a community like that for quite a while and avoid what can be somewhat expensive nursing home down the road.
Well, that's a goal that, as I said, most of my clients want. They don't want to go to a nursing home. And so that's where we're trying to do planning to help them avoid that. And part of the planning is making sure wherever they are living, they increase the chances of being able to age in place and maintain their independence. As you're talking about the supports, it reminds me sort of neighborhood watch. And generations ago, neighborhoods were also more close-knit than they are today. You knew your neighbors, and they knew you. And today we see that less so than it used to be. And neighborhoods are much more, they're always changing. Folks are more transient. They move from one job to another, location to another. And so you don't always have the same sets of eyes and ears and neighbors keeping an eye on families or the older families on the street that you once did.
Right.
And I like the idea of what you're describing, where you do have multiple sets of eyes and ears, making sure people are watching out for each other.
Exactly right. Yeah. Exactly right. You and I talked a little bit about, and I know you're passionate about this, so I want to hear from you about it. The seniors themselves, they are your client. They are our client, and how important. I think what I see many times, unfortunately, is the seniors feel they're losing control when they get into this process. The family gets involved. I'm sure you do that. But maybe you could talk a little bit about how it's really the senior themselves desires, especially if they can do the planning that you're talking about and get these things in place through an expert like yourself, how you kind of focus on that.
So Mike, it starts with when a senior comes to my office, if they're unmarried or married, the senior or the couple. And we sit down at the conference room table, and very often a senior is going to bring along one or more of their children. And I immediately turn to the children, and I say to them, I'm not going to be looking a lot at you today. I'm going to be focusing my attention on mom or dad right here. And the reason is I'm an elder law attorney, and my focus is on the elder, and the senior in the room is mom or dad. They're driving this bus. They control the decisions. And so this is about them and their planning. And that's really a key element that all families should be looking for when they're looking at working with any professional, whether it's medical, doctors, or lawyers. And too many lawyers, I think, today, and too many other professionals, when seniors reach a certain age, the professional no longer focuses on the client, on the senior. They turn their attention to the adult children or child in the room, as if the senior doesn't even exist anymore, or that they can't comprehend or make this decision. And I find that disrespectful. That's disrespectful to the scouting culture that I was telling you I grew up in. And so when families and seniors are looking at lawyers, that's something you should look for. Make sure you're working with a lawyer who can look you in the eye, who treats you with respect, who makes certain that you're the client making the decisions. The other thing is you want a lawyer who's pleasant to work with. You're going to be working with this person potentially for many years in the future. Have someone you enjoy talking to, that you feel like they're giving you the honest truth. And also, be careful if someone's telling you, you've got to do things this way, or this is the only way to do this. What I do with clients is I talk about what their goals are. Remember, and they tell me, well, my goal is I want to maintain my independence, or I want to do this or that. We tailor the planning off of their goals. And when I'm offering different planning options to clients, I always present pros and cons, benefits and disadvantages to different options. And I let the client make an informed decision. It's the client, the senior, that has to make that decision. But I help show them what the pros and cons are based on the legal issues and based on my experience as an elder law attorney. But it's always them driving that decision making. Those are key elements when folks are looking for a lawyer. And one thing I'd mention too, make sure you get stuff in writing.
I was going to talk about that because we do the same thing, you know, and you and I had talked about that. You're going through these things. They're not easy issues. They're complicated issues. Obviously, you have the most knowledge, but even so you're explaining them, and you know, I mean, it's the same way with me. I'm trying to listen, but I'm going to miss everything. So the importance of giving them something in writing, letting them digest it. We do the same thing with our leases and all the documentation. Basically, what we're trying to lead to is no surprises. You know, we're going to explain it. You may have digested some, you may not have digested everything, so let's get you everything in writing so hopefully there won't be any surprises as we go along this process.
Absolutely. All too often I have families that come in and say, look, we saw another lawyer years ago, and I signed some documents, they give me a copy, and I look and I say, do you understand what you signed? And they say, no. And I say, well, do you understand the implications here? Sometimes there's very significant tax implications or mass health implications for eligibility. And they don't understand. And I say, did the lawyer give you anything in writing, any letter? No. Be sure the lawyer puts in writing what some of these pros and cons are and what the meaning and purpose and implications are of any planning that you're going to do with a lawyer. If someone just puts a document in front of you and says, sign it, that should put a red flag in front of your face to say, wait a second, stop, drop, and roll. Let me work with a lawyer who's going to really explain this in writing to me so that I have a better understanding of what it is that I'm doing.
Sure. And this, not to be, you know, it happens. I mean, this can only become complicated. You talk about working with seniors and their families. Families, you know, sometimes, I mean, these are not easy things to talk about. So sometimes there can be, I hate to say it, but certain factors of families that are maybe, you know, it's hard to get everybody to agree. I mean, again, it's the seniors' desires. So, you know, your help could maybe avoid some of the pitfalls on that.
Well, when I'm working with seniors, ultimately, we can have a general discussion where they might want their children part of that. But when it comes to designing an estate plan, we kick the kids out of the room. It's us as the lawyer with the client because they're making the decisions.
Yep.
And that's really key here. And when it comes to making these challenging decisions, these are hard decisions, but what I pose to clients is the issue, if you don't do planning, if you ignore these potential risks down the road, you're going to put a tremendous burden on your loved ones, on your spouse, your children, your loved ones, because by failing to plan, you're going to put them in a position of tremendous stress, tremendous costs, likely involving the courts down the road, and likely impinging your own ability to maintain your independence and age in place. So planning is, when presented it with it in that fashion, most seniors really appreciate the idea of doing something to protect that they've worked so hard to save, which is their own independence and their savings.
So don't avoid it. Face it, you know, plan, work with an expert. I think your advice has been absolutely fabulous today, Patrick, and I really appreciate you taking the time to work with us. We hope that you enjoyed what we presented today. It was obviously informational. Again, Patrick Curley, certified elder law attorney. Patrick's office is located right off downtown Wakefield, right near the lake, a nice little house office there. Always available. And BrightView Wakefield, we have our Welcome Center located at 26 Princess Street, which is right off downtown Wakefield. Our telephone numbers will appear at the end of this show, so please don't hesitate to contact us if you have any questions, and certainly WCAT, the cable access television, if you want to call in here, get more information. Again, we hope you enjoy it. Patrick, I can't thank you enough. It was really very interesting for me, and I hope it was for the folks out there.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks
Thank
for
you,
having me.
sir.